Hey, everybody, this is Chris McCabe of e-commerce Chris, opening up a new video series that I'm doing. I'm interviewing agency heads, people like Drew Morgan's here of Marknology. Drew, how you doing?
Hello.
Welcome.
You-
And I just want to have conversations with experienced, seasoned experts like yourself on, especially at this time of year, right? For Black Friday, whether you listen and see this after Black Friday has already happened. As of this recording, it's 2 weeks away, or you hear it before, or maybe you're in the kind of post-mortem, what happened to me this Q4 period. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, because obviously you've worked with a bunch of brands, I think since 2016. Tell me what year you started doing all this.
Chris, 2013.
2013, over a decade. So you were doing that before I was doing this. So how about that?
Well, the Marknology is 2013. I'm actually just a
Okay.
couple years before that. I think you were at Amazon. We were all doing, different things. I was an actual e-commerce manager
Right.
versus an agency head and didn't have as much control over what we did. I can
Yep.
tell you how much.
Yep. So back then, perhaps I was still one of those crazy people cutting accounts down, suspending listings, sending policy warnings, all those sorts of things. Um, I have since changed. I have rehabilitated from my former account suspending self to helping sellers. But this is kind of one thing I wanted to talk about in terms of how much time different agency owners spend with brands trying to prevent problems during peak sales so that you're not scrambling. And then in a few minutes, we can talk about what you do if lightning strikes in a terrible way during Cyber 5 events. But in terms of and not like months and months and months ahead, of course, you have to prepare things way, way in advance. But let's say September into October, before November even hits, what kinds of conversations do you have with people about, you know, the last thing we want to do is make last minute changes that trip everything up and wreak havoc throughout the month of November? Are those easy conversations, tough ones? How do you handle that scenario?
Yeah. So definitely with a lot of these events under our belt now, it's definitely easier to be more confident about what we're suggesting during those times. When I was really figuring this out as a young agency owner, I didn't know what to expect, with Prime Day or Black Friday or Cyber Monday or any of these things. They've changed a lot through the last 10 years, just in how it used to be one day. Black Friday was not even that long ago was the day you went and stood in line to get $100 gift card at a retail store, right? Or
Hmm.
Cyber Monday was the big online day. And now we have these 5 days. We have a lot longer time. So, the conversations we're having, like we push back on, a lot of catalog changes if they're not emergencies. We're starting to have those communications around this might be something we want to wait for Q4. And so we push back on some of those initiatives, and spend more time, I think, on making sure our promotions and offers are right. Those are like, coupons, deals, Black Friday things, as well as inventory planning and
Hmm.
PPC, and really back off of creating new accounts, back off of big listing changes and things like that.
Yeah. Do people ever, I'm sure they do, but maybe you can speak to how you handle it. People like say, I saw a trend online or I saw a YouTube video. I want to do that too. And you're like, it's October 29th. We're not doing that right now.
Well, I think there's a difference between honestly communicating with an experienced marketer or, even like communicating, let's say with an Amazon seller,
Mhm.
or do it yourself, like team or a small team, or dealing with like a brand manager or an e-commerce manager with a larger brand. A
Yeah.
lot of times we're following what they're already doing, what they have planned into their promotional calendar as an e-commerce manager or brand manager. So there's less of that like fly by night YouTube guru feedback, stuff like that.
Good.
But we do get some of it. And, you know, when it comes to those kinds of things, I won't just say a hard no as an agency owner. We're here to serve. Like we are here
Hmm.
to serve. But it becomes more of a, hey, these are all the things that might go wrong. Or these are the things that, we're risking to do some of those things in prime time, holiday time.
Yeah. And then do you have trouble tracking people down for months and months of prep way ahead of this? Are they kind of like, we'll talk about that at the start of Q4 and they don't want to talk about it during the summer, even though you have to do certain things during the summer?
Yeah, you sound like you've been down this before. You're right. It can be hard to track them down. At Marknology, honestly, we have weekly calls with our clients, so we're pestering them. It becomes a pestering situation. Everything from having quarterly reviews with the clients over the last 3 months and then the next three, right? So you're ending September to talk
Mm,
about Q4, and we're having those quarterly reviews. We're having PPC quarterly reviews, so kind of like this account management one at PPC. What do we want to do for the next quarter? And I've started implementing advertising quarterly reviews where it's not just us coming with feedback, but it's really getting the client to summarize how they feel about our goals and what those goals are. And then that gives us a chance if anything is different from our status quo and what we've been doing, what we're planning on doing, that gives us a chance to have those conversations or at least be on the same page as the brand.
yeah. I mean, with the way competition is now, and just you need so many resources for so many things, whether it's ads or increases in fees, or sometimes having to hire somebody like me, right, to help out and get a listing reinstated faster. It just seems like because margins are what they are and costs are what they are, they would want to talk to you twice a week or three times a week to strategize this stuff because they can't really afford mistakes at this point, right?
Yeah, so hopefully we're not just starting our relationship in Q4. Like,
Yeah.
that might be the case in some instances, and we still have brands getting ready for 2025 now. They're not really thinking so much about crushing Q4. It's more about let's get ready now for a great start to 2025. But yeah, I mean, there's brands. This is a time where we make sure that our availability is as wide open as we can to triage. But if we've been doing all the right things, we've been talking weekly or biweekly or whatever that case is, we have Slack and project management software and all of that.
Mhm.
But if we've been doing things right, this shouldn't be a panic mode time of year for us. This should really be a like, look, we have a plan, let's execute it. How are we matching up to that plan? Do we need to adjust our strategy at all? But it's more adjustments and tweaks, and crossing T's and dotting I's than it is like
Yeah.
road mapping a plan from here.
Yeah. Yeah. What other pain points do you experience at this time of year, whether as an agency owner or just your brand's kind of pushing some of the problems they're having onto your shoulders? What are like the top one or two things that you typically see around now?
Well, for me as an agency, it's always, yeah, if we're dealing with more like corporate clients or enterprise brands, or there are a lot of them are taking vacation this time.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, and that actually is a pain point. It really is, for communication, if there's issues,
Yeah.
even billable, accounts receiving, accounts payable, that type of thing as an agency owner in this time of year is really just because you have all these holidays, all these short weeks, all these people out of town that you're dealing with, hard to get communication, hard to get momentum and a flow. So really we try to be set up as best we can to operate without them in that regard. And I think if there's anything that comes up that's like no matter how much you plan every single year, if you have an agency with a stable of brands, you're running into inventory problems. Whether it's late coming to the US and then getting to Amazon, whether it's in the US already, it's late getting into Amazon or it's getting checked in. As much as you want to advise and prep and try to get
Yeah.
inventory in, these are things that come down to the wire all the time. And so trying to help people just, facilitate that and be as ready as they can be.
I mean, if they're American based brands, Thanksgiving, hopefully they're not going too far away on vacation because they, you wouldn't be celebrating Thanksgiving overseas, right? With your family. Hopefully they're just taking 1 or 2 days off around then, right? Like the day itself or something because
Yeah, and I'm not talking about
yeah,
business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm talking
right.
about the accounting department and the
Sure,
and the
sure,
warehouse manager and different things like that that you just get,
sure.
people are trying to collect their paid vacation, their PTO before the year.
Yeah,
There's a lot
before the year. Yeah, yeah, because of
of
course, when I worked at Amazon, we had blackout periods, like November 1 to January 1st, forget it, don't go anywhere. It's like special top secret permission to get time off, and I just figure the way I see a lot of the brands that we work with operating lately is similar in terms of November, at least, where it's like we need all hands on deck because things can go wrong. I have a slightly different perspective because we're constantly troubleshooting stuff, both expected and unexpected, but still, it's such a every year there's new stuff that crops up. And sometimes it's even a little bit new to us, because if it's a competitor trying to attack you or not even abuse, like if it's Amazon just having a technical issue that screws stuff up, you can't always predict what's going to happen. So I don't know if you have these conversations as often with people like, what if something goes wrong? Do we have a battle plan ready? Um, I hope people think that way just to be, better to be safe than sorry, or, just better to be prepared and not need it. Right.
Yeah, I think, the last couple of years it's changed quite a bit, and I would say, I'd be lying if I said we know everything about everything across the board, right? So it's still a learning position for us always. The raised fees during Q4, the raised, inventory storage, and getting punished
Yeah.
harder for overstocking for Q4 coming into January. That's something we're going to try to do better. Is make sure, that was something that we got hit with a lot of fees at the beginning of 2024, at the end of
Right.
2023 with the inventory changes that happened across all of our brands. And so helping to educate there. And I think it's a cliche saying, but it's you know, you're not getting ready, you're always prepared to be ready. Right, or
Right.
right. You never have to get ready if you stay ready.
If you
Stay ready
stay
so you don't have
ready.
to get ready, right? Okay.
Yep.
That's the point. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And I think as much as it is preparing for I have you when things go wrong. So, but
By the way, Drew said that phrase clean and correctly before we hit record. So
because stay
it's
ready so
lost to history, but you said it right the first.
yeah, it's, also planning for success. Honestly, like, that can be a problem as well if, like, if your deals go just like you planned and you sell through inventory and you're crushing it or something goes viral.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. The when you're in those 4 or 5 days, what where does all your time go? What do you focus on? Do people stop asking you questions and they just everyone's heads down focused and hoping and praying things go right? Or do you continue off and on conversations with all the brands you're managing throughout that 5-day period?
I think the team I speak for the team, we really slow down the call volume. Okay, so just making the calendar a lot more open, and
Yeah.
not filling those days up so that we can triage if something happens. I think brand
Mhm.
owners could benefit from that advice as well. It's just
Smart.
like understand that things might go wrong, can go wrong, will go wrong if they can or right. And have your calendar open so that if you have to handle something, it doesn't become, compounded on top of everything else you're having to move.
Yeah.
The other thing would be, we go on a weekend in a 24-hour around the ship. We change shifts in advertise on my advertising team, and we alternate to make sure that we have coverage 24/7 during those days. So that's
Mhm.
something that we do as an agency. And it's not necessarily that they're in there making all of these tweaks. We just want them to be available at any time of day or night. If a budget goes out, if there's something we need to adjust, hey, this ASIN, this top ASIN isn't spending or it's not where it's at. Each account has its own maybe variables about what are the key things to focus on in this account during that time.
Yeah.
Some of it is essentially more manpower or more eyeballs, having more availability. Don't overplan. Don't be trying. It is the holidays.
Mhm.
But for me, it hasn't really been the holidays in the same way in a very long time.
Yeah.
For me, the holidays are not this like resting or relaxing time. I'm an agency owner, and I'm in a position to take that role for the brands or the clients and customers we serve. And so during that time, that's when we're really dialed in and focused. And a lot of that is simply being it's not necessarily sitting at the computer typing and just cranking out logging hours of work, but it's being available for anything that does happen and having regular checks during that time and just checking on inventory and checking on PPC, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would figure there's a lot more questions that people have now about their ads or about their searchability, about so many things that could happen. In the old days, when people weren't facing last minute crises as often, they would kind of set it up in advance. And unless there was some major glitch or problem, they'd just be like selling, selling, selling and focused on getting the orders out. This is going back a ways, but now there are just so many things you have to kind of follow up on and check on. Is it every hour? Is it every other hour? I mean, you would know better than I would.
Well, we have software that's going to give us a certain level of alerts. So we have dashboards as well. So it can be an hourly check on those dashboards to see like, hey, are we seeing spend like as simple as are we spending on these accounts? Have we overmaxed budget? Are we,
Mhm.
and if we are overmaxing budget, you go to another set of questions. Do we have like, permission with this account to increase the budget? Do we want to? Are we hitting the right KPIs and targets that we want? If so, let's turn it up. Same thing with inventory. And if there's major inventory issues, is there an FBM backup that would change the scenario? Maybe the
Mhm.
SKUs you're advertising on. We don't advertise on FBM, we advertise
Right.
on the FBA SKUs, so you would need to make a swap or a switch. Nothing that's too technical, but definitely like you have to keep eyes on it. You have to prepare for success and be able to, what if you get in a gift guide that you didn't expect and you get
Mhm.
published? That's happened to us before, and we were just screaming orders out the door, hadn't planned for that for a 50% lift because we
Mhm.
weren't anything that aggressive, and all of a sudden we were dealing with that. So, it's just being prepared for whatever might happen.
Sweet.
Like,
And
I was
then
gonna bring
oh,
up
yeah,
as well,
go ahead.
like, think 4 years ago, we had a different election, right? And we had a pandemic. And so we're in another election year, this 4-year, round.
Cycle, yeah. Mhm.
Right? So we've got, a new president to be. We've got that kind of just I think that's a different economy.
Mhm.
There's this different energy in the air around what that might be. A little anxiety around it. Like, should we expect better? Should we expect worse? There can be a lot of difference, around this time of year. Like I've seen the big 5 kind of miss before where they
Mhm.
don't hit as big and it's
Okay.
being or just like spread out through the rest of the year. We just see like, increased sales a little bit more than normal, but there wasn't this big event. So that can happen as well. And just if that happens and you don't hit as big on those 5 days, what's the plan after that?
What's the plan indeed? Well, that's leads me to my next question. What's your kind of maybe my last question actually, what's your post-mortem in terms of the holidays come and go? Do you have a sit down in January? Do you start going over some numbers of people, closer to December something in terms of like, this is what we projected, this is what we expected, this is what we got. How do you handle that?
So there's a shorter recap. Um, That's done kind of like in December, of like what happened in November, mainly
Mhm.
because we might have 2 weeks plus a little bit of selling season left to
Yeah,
really sell for the holidays. And some brands do well into January and all of that, but let's just say you have to like December 20th or so to really crush it.
mhm,
Uh, we need to determine how well we did in November or how good or how bad we did in November to then decide what's our inventory situation at? Do we need to clear through inventory? Do we need to push PPC harder? Should we focus on profit because we already hit our sales numbers that we want and let's like lean up through December? So you decide if it's add more firewood to the fire or should we let it die down a little bit as we close out the year? And so you need some sort of recap to kind of see how you're doing 2 months out of the 3 into Q4 and then what to do with those
mhm,
last 20 days. And hopefully there's
yeah,
the same things you're worried about in the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, those KPIs, whether it's inventory on these ASINs or sales velocity on specific, each brand has its own like hero ASINs and targets that you're
right.
doing. Um, it shouldn't have to be this deep dive across the whole account. You're looking at those main things, saying, "Are
Sure.
we what we thought?" And if not, let's game plan real quick. Do we do a coupon? Do we do a push? How much inventory do we want to have as we close out the year? Is there any benefit, even tax benefits to some things, like depending on the brand and what they're trying to accomplish? So
Right.
we're not always coming up with those plans around, let's say, tax benefits to sell it through inventory or having it sold. But we might help execute them if the brand owner has a plan around that.
Sweet. And then I assume in January you have some kind of full assessment
Correct.
analysis where you go through everything and
No, it becomes a crazy time of year.
learn
Like
for it. Yeah. Sorry?
after December 20th, it's, the slowest time of year for us as agency owners, I would
Yeah.
say, in regards to just landing new brands or engaging or coupons, discounts, deals, things like that. And it becomes, we slow it down through Christmas a little bit with family and things like that. We get a
Yeah.
couple of days there, I think, that are pretty restful. And then it becomes, We have a quarterly review, which we do every quarter, and then there becomes a much bigger one, which is not only are we recapping 2024 and everything that happened, but we start, if not already, what's the 2025 plan? And so it's a lot. It's a crazy time of year. I think this is the first year in the last 5 that I haven't gone somewhere remote, with my
Mhm,
family to just like we camp at an Airbnb or somewhere remote and just crank through what's a pretty stressful time of year
mhm.
for businesses, but something really big and what we've built our agency around is really taking advantage and helping brands take advantage of this time of year.
Sweet. All right, Drew Marknology, thanks so much for joining me for this conversation. People want to reach you, best place to do it?
I'm on LinkedIn, Andrew Morgans with an S, or marknology.com. Marknology, Marknology. Instagram. I think I'm a little bit of everywhere. And usually my tag is just my name. So would love to
Mhm.
connect with anyone. If anyone disagrees with anything that we said today, I would love to hear
Feel
it.
free.
No,
Yeah.
I really would. I would love to hear alternate strategies or how you guys are approaching things differently. I try to speak more generally today, but when you have 40 brands or so, that you're managing, they all have a little bit different strategy, a little different approach, based on each brand's personality. So, happy to chat. And Chris, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, of course. We'll have you again. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.